civilization. Rome is order. Rome is power. And out here, we are Rome!
Remember how the Romans had those arenas with the rising and lowering columns of interchangeable terrain? How Boudicca's rebellion led her from Sherwood Forest to the gates of Rome on the back of an elephant? Xbox One launch title Ryse, Son of Rome takes the spectacle rather than accurate approach to its presentation of history, presenting the player with highly visual sequences such as these. Over a year after its release, I headed back into the mythical world in which deities walked among the men of Rome and game designers took liberties with history. The story of Ryse is one of personal vengeance. Players take on the role of Marius, a centurion in the Roman legions. The game begins at the end of the story. Marius is amongst the legionaries defending the city of Rome against the barbarian hordes that have breached the gates. The player takes Marius to the palace where they meet the emperor, Nero. From here, the game jumps back as Marius regales his story to Nero, who fears that the mythical Damocles, a soldier raised from the dead to exact vengeance on those who betrayed him, is hunting him down. Marius' story takes him from Rome to Sherwood, to York and Scotland before leading him back home. While it may be cliched, the story and its twists are certainly well presented, and the missions fit into the narrative of the story, if not the progress of actual history. The voice acting is also superb here. The emotions of all the characters come across clearly in the dialogue. Even the in-game dialogue manages to not sound overly fake and, for want of a better word, gamey. The game is stunning to look at, making use of the console's capabilities. Character models are extremely detailed, and the animators have done an excellent job at lip-syncing the dialogue to the in-game characters. The armour of the Roman legionaries is resplendent and contrasts brilliantly with the grubby furs of the barbarian Britons. Having said this, the game could perhaps do with a few more character models for the soldiers encountered by Marius. For each soldier type in each army there is one model, which gives the impression of fighting through and around hordes of clones. Given the style of gameplay, move to a fight, fight and then move again, it is tempting to rush through the levels, but try stopping every now and then. Stopping and looking around. While the paths Marius will walk down are tightly mapped out, there are some truly breathtaking views to discover. From the forest of Sherwood to the townscapes of York and Rome, the developers haven't skimped on adding detail to the background environments, which lends a larger scope to the otherwise tight game world. Playing Ryse is like playing through a Hollywood blockbuster set, albeit loosely, in the depths of history. It's difficult, especially later in the game, not to think of such productions as Spartacus, particularly the television series, and of Russell Crowe's Gladiator. Action is frequent and brutal as the player guides Marius along linear paths from set piece to set piece in what can only be described as a hack and slash romp. There are 4 main action buttons: bash, slash, parry and roll, supplemented by the ability to start executions and throw pilot at the opponents. Attack patterns seem more limited than the similar systems in Shadow of Mordor or the Arkham series, but somehow the simplicity complements the brutal nature of the game. Speaking of brutality, it is the executions that really bring a cinematic feel to the gameplay. Once opponents are worn down enough, Marius can begin an execution. These take the form of quick-time event-style combinations of the 2 primary attack buttons. The sequence of presses is indicated by the colour that the unlucky opponent flashes. The game slows down and changes camera angle, which can be refined by the player, to show these manoeuvres in all their glory. Successfully completing an execution will give Marius a boost. I recommend keeping the option set to restore health, which will be a great aid, especially on harder difficulties. Throughout the game's 8 levels, Marius will be called upon to lead groups of Roman soldiers in battle. Sometimes he will designate targets for archers, sometimes provide cover from a large ballista-like device called a Scorpius. Then there are the times that Marius will lead a group of soldiers in a shield wall come turtle towards the enemy lines. These sections don't feel quite complete. It's as if they were part of a larger system that was discarded during development, but they certainly add some variety to proceedings, and the mechanics do function adequately within the confines of their appearances. To call Ryse's Gladiator mode multiplayer is perhaps generous, since only 2 players can join together to face the challenges of the arena. Gladiator mode is a survival mode in the vein of Gears of War's Horde mode, pitting the players against waves of enemies. The mode itself fits the setting perfectly. especially given the inclusion of a commentator who regales the crowd with the story being performed by the gladiators and commentating on the successes and failure of player attacks. I'm a big fan of cooperative play, and the need to find only one ally to play with has certainly added to the longevity of this mode. There's even a solo mode incorporated which allows players to improve without needing a partner. The game also includes microtransactions which affect multiplayer the most. Players can purchase gold which can be used to buy equipment packs. The pay-to-win potential of this is reduced, however, as packs of equipment are limited by the rank of the player. Ryse is not a lengthy game, but it doesn't need to be. It's an enjoyable, if slightly simplistic, hack-and-slash game that makes no pretense to be anything other than what it is. The levels are replayable, either at higher difficulties or even just to relieve the tensions of a bad day. Gladiator mode also offers a fun distraction, especially if you have a friend who owns a copy of the game. Overall, Ryse is definitely worth picking up, especially if it can be found at a reduced price.